I can remember being on the set, and I'd literally just done a scene, and the pages are rushed through, and they're standing there about to do the lines. In fact, it was that moment when he takes off his helmet and says who he is, and I'd written this speech, and he said, "I'm not going to speak this shit." Ridley says, "Well, what's the problem, Russell? It's shit. It's stupid shit. What do I want to speak this for? Why can't we have it the way it was this morning? You know, because that's what he's rehearsed." Fair enough. So what is Ridley going to do? He says, "Okay, we'll shoot that." So they shoot the earlier version. It's not all that good, you know. And then Russell does it, and then he comes over and he says, "Let me have a look at that shit." And he looks at the page again. He says, "Well, might as well try it." So they do the new material.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
And it's fantastic, electrifying, you see. And so Ridley said, "Russell, what's the problem? It worked." And Russell says, it was shit, but I'm the greatest actor in the world, and I can make even shit sound good."
Bill Nicholson had survived the first battle, but further struggles lay ahead.
There has been a change in our business. I've seen in the last few years actors, particularly actors that are being paid $20 million a picture, having an enormous amount of power that they did not formerly have. And looking at the director more as a traffic cop than the person that's really supposed to be guiding and controlling the film.
Back at X-Men, the director, Bryan Singer, felt that he was neither guiding nor controlling the film. Its destiny was in other hands. X-Men is the biggest-selling comic in the world, bigger than Superman or Batman. If its fans liked the movie, the word of mouth alone would make it a hit. But if they didn't, Fox would pay the price. And now the star had dropped out.
And I was left shooting the movie with no actor, and I'll tell you, for a brief moment, I really was pleased, because I thought, now we can shut down and not make the release date and have a good, healthy amount of time to make this movie. I actually saw it as a blessing, and I was looking forward to going home.
But Fox had fixed the release date, so for the studio chief, there was no going back.
So I went to my casting and said, "So who's the best person we tested?" Because we had tested a zillion unknowns, and she gave me a couple tapes, and one of them was Hugh Jackman, and I thought he looked good in the tape. Had her fly him to Los Angeles and said, if he walks in the room and he has charisma, he's got the job. And I thought when he came in, he looked like a young Clint Eastwood.
Went into a room like this and sat down and read 2 pages of dialogue and walked out 5 minutes later.
The minute he walked in my office, it was, I mean, I knew he had that quality. You were just, in a room of 100 people, you would be drawn to Hugh. I thought he just had that manly man quality that Sean Connery and Mel Gibson have, that he had the looks, and they had the ability, and he drew me into him.
But the final decision rested with the director, who was on location in Toronto.
Hugh Jackman flew into Toronto, and when he walked in the room, I was like, "That's Hugh Jackman?" And we sat down and did a screen test with him and Anna Paquin.
Get out.
Where am I supposed to go?
I don't know.
You don't know or you don't care?
Pick one.
We were shooting in this building that we were using for one of locations, and some security guard, some young security guard, comes up to me, and I don't think he knew I was the director. I think he, as most people, thought I was a production assistant, and he asked me. He kind of comes up next to me and quietly says, "Is that the guy they got to play Wolverine?" And I thought for a moment, and I turned to him and I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Cool." And then as soon as the screen test was done, I walked up to Hugh and offered it to him.
He looked good, but nothing like the comic book hero. Everyone was nervous. What would the fans say? Soon, a storm of cyber criticism was raining down from the internet.
There was a lot of gossip on the internet, a lot of negativity, a lot of skepticism among fans. I mean, things just looked really bad. Wolverine was played by a 6'3" actor. Cyclops was played by a 5'9" actor. You know, all these bits of lore were being violated. I wasn't in a position where I could get online and defend each thing because, you know, one person likes the idea, the other person doesn't. I mean, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people on the internet. It's just not going to ever happen.
In the end, Fox got its money back many times over, as the movie went on to become one of the hits of the year. But the experience left its mark on the young director.
I've developed very thick skin now. I mean, I think everything's gonna, it's all uphill from that experience, that X-Men experience. That was, I took probably a couple of years off my life, I guarantee. It's unbelievable.
On a big Hollywood picture, once the picture starts, it's a juggernaut. And a director, as we've heard many times, has complete control of a motion picture, and very, very few studios are going to go head-to-head with the director of a movie, because if it comes to a breach, you have to shut down the movie while you thrash it out for a few days, and you're spending $100,000 a day just having the place sit there idle, the soundstage, day after day.
Over at Miramax, studio chiefs Bob and Harvey Weinstein were about to do exactly that, go head-to-head with the director and threaten to close his movie down. The two brothers run the most commercially successful minor studio. They're constantly on the hunt for good scripts and thought they'd found something special in Scream, an audacious reworking of horror cliches by an unknown writer, Kevin Williamson.
I gave it to my agent on a Friday. All the agents at the agency read it, and on Monday morning they said, we're going out with it tomorrow. And so they prepped it, the whole town, and there was a bidding war. I was sitting in my closet with my telephone. Every time they'd call, I'd pick it up and they'd say, okay, we're here now. You know, so-and-so just offered this much more money. And it went back and forth all day long. When you hear thousands of dollars, then you hear hundreds of thousands of dollars, suddenly it doesn't matter if it's $300,000 more. You know, it's like, I just really want to pay my phone bill.
Miramax Films then secured the legendary horror film director Wes Craven, his very name synonymous with blood and gore.
Bob Weinstein called me and said, do you want to do this? And I was like, wow, yeah. And then I said, oddly enough, no, because the first 15 pages of it, which is the Drew Barrymore sequence, was so violent and so disturbing. There was the liberal part of me was saying, don't do any more violence, you know, move on. And then some kid came up to me at a convention and said, you know, I like your early films because you really kicked ass. And I was like, oh, are you afraid to go there anymore? You know, so there was this kind of like push and pull within myself. And I called him back and said, okay, I'm going to do one more kick-ass scary film.
Horror has always been the illegitimate child of Hollywood, but handled correctly, it can capture a huge teen audience. The Weinsteins were betting the farm on Scream.
The Scream script by Kevin was so clever in so many ways because it was beyond a horror film. It was, first of all, it was a form of parody of the cliches of horror films.
You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters?
When you take something that's a known pattern or a series of cliches and then shatter it in front of the audience's eyes, there's this sense of terror and a sense of invigoration because it's like, I think subconsciously we want things to be seen anew, you know. So that's one of the things that Scream did.
So, you got a boyfriend?
Why? You want to ask me out on a date?
Maybe. Do you have a boyfriend?
No.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
You have to be ahead of your audience, and you have to have something of substance in a good horror film. Because if you think about it, there's always horror films opening and closing, and they don't do that well. It's the rare one that really takes off and becomes, you know, a cult favorite.
Scream seemed to have all the ingredients to establish a lucrative franchise. However, as production entered its second week, producer Kathy Conrad got a call from Bob Weinstein. He'd viewed the first week's footage and was not happy.